Good morning, Alex and friends. I'm Grace. Today is Tuesday, May 20th, 2025, and you're listening to Alex's News. The weather in Riverside today will feature a high of 85.9 degrees, so it's shaping up to be a warm one, with the low tonight dipping to a comfortable 64.4 degrees. Perfect weather to keep in mind as you plan your day. Coming up on Alex's News, we'll be taking a close look at a recent Supreme Court decision and exploring the significant implications it could have for around 350,000 Venezuelans. We'll also investigate why Governor Newsom's proposed changes to the Medi-Cal program in California are igniting such a fierce firestorm of debate and what the main points of contention are. All this and more coming up on Alex's News. Stay tuned. We're starting this morning with a major U.S. immigration policy development. The Supreme Court has greenlit a Trump administration plan affecting hundreds of thousands of Venezuelan nationals. Our national affairs reporter Ethan joins us. Ethan, what's the core of this Supreme Court decision?
Grace, the Supreme Court issued an emergency order yesterday. It allows the Trump administration to lift temporary protected status, or TPS, for about 350,000 Venezuelans. This status, TPS, is a temporary grant that had shielded them from deportation and allowed legal work due to unsafe conditions in their home country.
For these 350,000 individuals, what are the immediate consequences? Their legal status seems to be very much up in the air now.
The impact is immediate and severe. They face deportation risk. The Department of Homeland Security, under Secretary Kristi Noem, can now terminate their TPS and work permits and start removal proceedings. This is despite protections previously extended by the Biden administration through October 2026.
This overturns previous court actions, doesn't it?
Yes, it puts on hold a San Francisco federal judge's ruling that had blocked Secretary Noem's plan to end these protections. The Supreme Court's intervention allows the administration to act while litigation continues in lower courts. Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson notably dissented from this order.
Is it true this doesn't impact all Venezuelans with TPS?
Correct. This ruling specifically targets the approximately 350,000 Venezuelans whose TPS was granted or extended in 2023. Another group of about 250,000 who received TPS in 2021 are not affected by this particular decision. Their protections, as of now, last until at least September 10, 2025, which is 113 days from today.
What's the administration's rationale for treating these two groups differently? It seems like a very fine line to draw.
DHS Secretary Noem argues each TPS designation is separate and must be assessed independently. Her February 2025 decision to end TPS for the 2023 cohort cited an updated evaluation, claiming conditions in Venezuela no longer met criteria for them, and that continuing it was, quote, contrary to the national interest, end quote. Specific public details from DHS justifying this differing assessment, particularly the precise changes in Venezuela, are scarce. Reports suggest this is a first, an administration actively trying to rescind an existing TPS grant.
The lack of detailed public justification must be alarming for those affected. What's the reaction from advocacy groups and the Venezuelan community?
There's widespread concern and condemnation. Advocates call it a devastating blow. One group described it, according to reports, as, quote, the single largest action in modern American history, stripping any group of non-citizens of immigration status, end quote, warning of significant humanitarian and economic harm. William Diaz, founder of Casa de Venezuela Orlando, has stated that many Venezuelans who previously supported Donald Trump now feel betrayed.
A tough situation indeed. What advice is being given to those affected?
Immigration attorneys such as Wayne Golden are advising immediate legal counsel. Affected individuals should explore all alternatives, such as applying for asylum, which is a separate and distinct legal process from TPS. It's a critical time for them to understand their individual options.
This is a significant policy reversal, especially since TPS was originally designated under the Biden administration. What's the outlook?
The original TPS for Venezuela was designated in March 2021 due to the ongoing crisis there and later extended. This Supreme Court decision enables a major policy shift by the Trump administration. The situation is very fluid, Grace. Lower court litigation is expected to continue, and individuals affected will likely pursue their own legal challenges.
A very uncertain and anxious time for so many. Ethan, thank you for clarifying this complex ruling and its profound implications. We appreciate your reporting on this first major story today. Our second story this morning hits close to home for many Californians, as Governor Newsom's revised budget proposal is causing quite a stir, particularly concerning healthcare. Joining us to break down these proposed changes is our state policy reporter, Chloe. Chloe, this sounds like a significant shift, and not one that's going down smoothly.
It certainly isn't, Grace. The governor's office is trying to tackle a projected $12 billion state budget deficit. This deficit, according to multiple reports, is partly driven by declining revenues and higher-than-expected healthcare expenditures. A big part of their strategy to close this gap involves cuts to the Medi-Cal program. For those who might not know, Medi-Cal is California's Medicaid program, providing health coverage to millions of low-income individuals and families.
And what specific cuts are we talking about? It sounds like they're making some people sick with worry over these budget pills.
That's one way to put it. According to analyses by Perplexity API, the revised budget suggests freezing new Medi-Cal enrollment for undocumented adults. Additionally, for those undocumented adults already enrolled, the plan is to impose a $100 monthly premium. That premium, however, wouldn't start until 2027, which is still over a year and a half from today, May 20th, 2025.
$100 a month can be a huge burden for many families. What kind of savings is the state expecting from this, and what other areas are affected?
The state estimates these measures could save around $5.4 billion by the 2028-2029 fiscal year. But Grace, it's not just about enrollment and premiums. Perplexity API also notes the plan includes severe cuts to reproductive health services within Medi-Cal, which covers essential things like family planning and abortion services. Advocates fear this will be devastating for women's health and reproductive rights.
That's a major concern. How are health advocates and legislators reacting to all of this? It sounds like a bitter pill for them to swallow.
The reaction has been swift and strong. Multiple reports, including from Cal Matters via the Times Standard and Mountain View Voice, describe the proposed changes as, quote, shocking, end quote, and, quote, plain cruel, end quote. Organizations like the Latino Legislative Caucus are actively protesting, particularly against the cuts impacting immigrants' access to Medi-Cal, as reported by rtumble.com. They're really trying to caucus a change in direction.
The Latino Legislative Caucus has been quite vocal, haven't they? What are their main arguments?
Absolutely. Senator Maria Elena Durazo, as cited by Perplexity API, even characterized the proposal to charge higher premiums based on immigration status as a form of, quote, redlining, end quote. For viewers unfamiliar, redlining historically refers to discriminatory practices that deny services to residents of certain areas based on race or ethnicity. She questioned its constitutionality, arguing it creates a discriminatory, two-tiered healthcare system. The caucus is really emphasizing the need to protect these critical services for working families, especially Latinos and immigrants, who they point out are significant contributors to California's economy.
And what about other groups? I imagine the Latino Coalition for a Healthy California has weighed in with similar concerns.
They have indeed. The LCHC, according to Perplexity API, condemned these proposed Medi-Cal cuts and reductions to safety net programs, calling them a dangerous departure from California's commitment to healthcare expansion. They argue that these freezes effectively translate to cuts, jeopardizing what they call a lifeline for Latino, immigrant, and underserved communities.
Now, critics are saying these cuts aren't strictly necessary, that this is a policy choice. Can you elaborate on that? It sounds like they believe the budget could be balanced without these particular cuts.
That's a key point of contention. Opponents, including the National Health Law Program, as mentioned by Perplexity API, argue that the state has other options. They point to Governor Newsom's simultaneous proposals or continued support for other substantial state expenditures. For instance, the Mountain View Voice and Perplexity API report the budget includes proposals for increased tax credits for Hollywood. And rtumble.com, along with the Mountain View Voice and Perplexity API, note substantial allocations from the climate budget to high-speed rail and CAL FIRE. So the argument is that these are discretionary spending choices.
So the argument is that the money could come from elsewhere, rather than from healthcare for vulnerable populations? What about the economic contributions from these communities?
Precisely. And to bolster that argument, critics highlight the economic contributions of the affected communities. Perplexity API notes that undocumented Californians, for example, contributed an estimated $8 billion in state and local taxes in 2023. The thinking is that these contributions demonstrate the state has resources that could offset the perceived need for these cuts. There's also concern, as Perplexity API points out, that this budget might divert funds from voter-approved initiatives like Propositions 35 and 56, which were intended to enhance healthcare access and support reproductive health. This is seen by some as a betrayal of voter trust.
That adds another layer of complexity. Is there any discussion about the political motivations or external pressures influencing these decisions?
There is. rtumble.com notes a perception that Governor Newsom might be more focused on national issues and his future political ambitions. Additionally, Perplexity API suggests Newsom has faced pressure from federal policies, including potential threats to cut Medicaid funding for states providing coverage to immigrants without legal status. Though it's important to remember, as Perplexity API clarifies, California's Medi-Cal expansion for undocumented immigrants is fully state-funded, as federal matching funds aren't available for this group. So some analysts think Newsom might try to deflect criticism by blaming these external pressures.
This is a complex issue with many layers, and it sounds like the debate is just heating up. Chloe, thank you for shedding light on this developing story and these proposed budget cuts. It seems the debate over California's fiscal health versus public health is far from over. Here are some other headlines. President Donald Trump visits Capitol Hill Tuesday, May 20, 2025, to rally House Republicans behind his $3 trillion legislative proposal. The bill extends 2017 tax cuts, adds new tax breaks, increases military and border spending, while cutting Medicaid, food aid, and clean energy programs. GOP leaders plan to use budget reconciliation for swift passage, with Trump attending their conference. However, fiscal conservatives demand deeper cuts and faster Medicaid work requirements, while moderates worry about social program cuts and seek a higher SALT cap. Trump aims to unite these divided factions. As the Trump administration overhauls FEMA, cutting funding and shifting disaster recovery to states, Mississippi tornado survivors await federal aid over 2 months after 18 tornadoes killed 7 and caused widespread damage. Current FEMA policies limit home repair funds. A proposed bipartisan bill seeks to expand FEMA's permanent repair authority and elevate it to a cabinet agency, but reforms aren't yet implemented. In New Zealand, Parliament faces gridlock over proposed lengthy suspensions for 3 Maori Party legislators. Last November, they performed a protest haka against a bill redefining the Treaty of Waitangi. They face sanctions for disorderly conduct interrupting proceedings, not the haka itself, a revered cultural expression. A vote on sanctions was delayed from May 20th to June, amid public protests supporting the MPs. Hopes for a Russia-Ukraine peace deal are dim, despite former President Trump's recent calls with Presidents Putin and Zelensky. Putin is open to ceasefire talks after other agreements. Ukraine demands a ceasefire first and won't cede territory. An Istanbul meeting yielded no breakthrough, with Russia demanding territory and an end to Western arms for Ukraine. And Greece's foreign minister, Georgios Geropetritis, called the Gaza war a nightmare, urging a ceasefire and more humanitarian aid. He told the AP about broader global turmoil, including a, quote, political identity crisis in Europe, stressing the need for strong leadership as Greece holds the UN Security Council presidency and reiterated support for Ukraine. That's all we have for now. Today's episode was made by Alexander King with Claude Sonnet 3.7, Gemini Pro 2.5 Experimental, Gemini Flash 2.0, Perplexity Sonar Pro, and Google Cloud Text-to-Speech. I hope you have a great day. I'll see you tomorrow, Alex.